With the valve coating leaks again.
Hi, this is Derek at Boise Cylinder Head Services doing our live video. This is our episode 6. We have done 6 of them now. And this is Booker.
Nice to see you guys again.
Yep. Let's see. We got a couple things for today that we've just thought of.
Yeah.
We had Duramax diesel head come in, and those things are pretty commonly known for coolant leaks or combustion gas in the coolant through the injector tube area. There's a seam there in the casting that lets combustion gas flow in after it's cracked open. But it's pretty common. We got a pressure test on it to find those type of issues. Usually the customer has complaints of combustion gas in your coolant system, and that's our telltale sign that you need a new cylinder head. We did have a set of these come in this week that we pressure tested, it passed. That wasn't really the complaint of the customer, but we checked it out anyways to be a little defensive there and make sure they're not going to have that issue. What issue we did have is bent valve. And normally we have like pistons slapping the face of the valve that bends it, right here. The piston will come down, contact that while the engine's running, and the valve will bend crooked. And it'll be like an L-shaped or snake-shaped or whatever. It'll just bend. This one, we believe, had a rocker dislodge, and so let's see if you guys can see that there. There's a curvature to that when it goes up and then curves off to the side there from where that rocker slipped off and jammed it sideways. These are really annoying because trying to get this valve out of the guide is pretty difficult. A lot of times we have to cut it off. This one wasn't quite that bad, but it was quite a struggle to get this thing out. But yeah, it's not a super common thing, but it's been known to happen. At least we've seen it several times where it's rockers dislodged and just bent that valve. There's also some valve coking going on with this thing. And that happens with direct injection vehicles. We have a video on that as well in our video playlist there. But valve coking is when was it the EGR?
Well, yeah. So it's the recirculative system that goes through the intake and burns that oil and fuel. And so it gets a gummy, carbony surface to it, and just sticks to the tip of the edge of the valve there in the face of it, and just builds up. And then that essentially turns into pitting in the exhaust seats and intake seats, and takes out to where we have to do a valve job.
And also, there's a couple things. I think we have a video talking about where we're. So there's cleaning systems out there where you can shoot this chemical into your intake, and that's supposed to loosen this stuff up and shoot it through the exhaust and get it out of your engine to clean it up. In this case, with valve coking, when that stuff dislodges, and you don't even have to use this cleaner for this stuff to dislodge and cause problems, but imagine that type of cleaner would just make it worse. But it'll jam up in your piston rings and the cylinder wall, mar up that stuff, along with the pitting of the valves and all the other damage that causes. So, in order to fix those type of issues, you really do need a valve jobber to get in there and clean them off the engine, because anything you do on the engine is just going to leave that dirt and debris there, and it'll just cause lots of damage. So,
and they do also make a pretty expensive blasting gun that hooks up to the intake. You have to take the plenum off, but it hooks up to the intake ports. And it shoots walnut shells down in there, and then you got to vacuum them out and do all that. And it is an effective way of cleaning them. It's not a cost-effective way of cleaning them, and usually by the time that you have that much valve coking going on, the damage is already done, and it's really just time to pull the cylinder heads and rebuild them at that point.
Yeah, and probably inspect the whole block just for that damage there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the jobs that we've seen in here this week. We're going to do a valve job, clean that thing up, recut the seats, get a couple new valves for it, resurface it, get it back to our customer with new seals on it, and they'll be in good shape. At least their cylinder heads will be. We don't get to see the block side of things at this location here. But yeah, that's the Duramax 6.6 diesel. A little background story on that. Another thing that we've seen this week that we've actually seen a couple times in the last few months is the Subaru variable valve timing, like 2008 Subaru Outback cylinder head. When it runs out of oil, the cam tends to break. And we have a video on that too from the last one we saw, but we saw another one today. Figured we'd show you guys that cylinder head and what that looks like. We got that head right here. You want to pull the rocker arms off?
Yeah.
But this one, this one had, so we could put a cam bolt in the end of it or put the cam gear on the end of it, and we could still get the cam to move at the snout. And without pulling out the rocker arms or like looking very closely at the rocker arms, you wouldn't really tell that there's an issue there. I mean, obviously, if you're driving the thing, there's definitely going to be a notable difference because it snaps right in the middle of the cam, so only half the cylinder is running. Let's see. I'll hold it up and you don't twist the cam. We'll show you what we're talking about. But this is the cam here. Right here, this is the cam in the head. It controls the valve train, opens up the valves and closes the valves so that you can have a functioning engine. And what we've seen here is all this area is right here is blackened out. This thing was starved for oil. And sometimes when these things are starved from oil, you're going to get some cam bearing damage and some binding. And that's what I think we have here because this thing has snapped right in the center. Booker's going to twist this bolt here and show you what it looks like when only half the cam spins. So as you can see, these lobes are spinning around here. And it should be all one unit. Oh, look at that.
Sometimes it'll bind because it's got brakes in it.
There we go.
But essentially, it's enough to let the vehicle run, but you're still going to get misfires and poor runnability.
Yeah, the top. So this top portion of it is spinning or is not spinning or barely spinning at all. Definitely not enough to function because all the driving force that it has is in the front of the cam, and there's a clean break in the center. So this damages the cam bearings. Probably all three of them, but mostly this front one where we showed you that blackened spot. Imagine this head's junk. Yeah, there's no way this head's not junk. But it needs a replacement cylinder head. And so that's what we're going to do is replace that cylinder head. But yeah, oil starved. That's one of the problems you can have when you run your car out of oil. I think the whole lower end of this thing's toast as well, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going to pretty much replace the whole engine, long block worth. This is the part we get to see most commonly is the cylinder heads here at this location. What else have we seen this week?
So we have the Honda 3.5s. We have two different generations of those in here, but both, I believe, with the same issue of bent valves. I think in one scenario, it was a piston that had, or a rod, that had broken, and it came up in one of the cylinders, and they caught it quick enough to where it didn't, destroy any of the rest of the cylinders. But that stuff seems to be commonly happening on these Honda 3.5s that go in the pilots and those type of vehicles.
Yeah, and honestly, we see things in waves. We'll not see a certain vehicle for 6 months or so, and then all of a sudden we'll see 3 or 4 of them in a week period. Kind of strange. Don't know what causes this phenomenon, but seems to be kind of a consistent thing. Like Chrysler 4.7s, we won't see them, 6 months out of the year, and then we'll just see, 5 sets all in 1 month. Valve seat fallout issues where we got to replace the cylinder heads or install new seats. I'm gonna pull up this resurfacing here.
We've also we've been seeing a lot of the Volvos lately, which is cool because it's kind of word of mouth. It's interesting that there's a bunch of guys, that kind of group together and they just love their Volvos. So we've been doing the 2.3 mechanical adjustment, heads here for a little while. I believe some are turbo, some are non-turbo, but those tend to hold up pretty well. But This particular one that we got in has quite a bit of mileage on it, so it's taken a little bit of a beating.
Hi, Ryan. Glad you could be here.
Nice to see you.
We're gonna show off this surface roughness gauge next on this giant head 4.2. What's this thing at?
It's a GM. I believe it's out of a Hummer or
Chevy Trailblazer, 2008 straight six Chevy Trailblazer head. This thing is just gigantic. We had a burnt valve on this thing, a couple burnt valves across the cylinder caused by too much guide clearance on the exhaust valves. So when you got, the guide clearance is supposed to be about 1,000 and a half clearance from the valve to the guide. And when you get that worn out over time, all of them wear out. Some of them more than others. This one, we probably had about 3,000 clearance on a few different guides. And when that starts to happen, the heat relief that is supposed to occur from that close contact between the valve and the guide starts to
increase in temperature.
be ineffective, and then the valve increases in temperature, which causes the seat to get hotter and the valve to get hotter, and then it starts wearing down the seat, widening the seat width and the contact area, which is also a big factor in heat control on the valve. And then it just keeps getting hotter and hotter until it burns a hole in the side of the valve and the seat. Then you get a misfire. So what we did with this one was obviously fix that guide clearance and then also fix that contact area there. And then we resurfaced this head. We're going to assemble it with a few new valves and valve stem seals, get it back to our customer. But what I wanted to show you is this surface roughness gauge that we have, which kind of keeps control of how good our surfaces are with our machines. We've got two machines, a Comex and a Burco resurfacing machines. And one's 20 years old, 25 years old, one's about 5 years old. And with this, we can kind of check our surface and know what quality of finish we're getting. So this thing just drags across the surface with this fancy little machine here. I'll show you all the little bits and pieces here in a second. So this little tiny needle, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. Not bad. So there's a little tiny needle right here that just got a really fine point to it. And that goes into this little machine, and it drags across the surface just about 1/4 of an inch, then drags back, and it'll tell you the peaks and the valleys of the surface finish. And what we see most commonly around here is about 15 thousandths, 15 RMI. Which one is it set to? UIN, which I don't remember what that is, but it's just the peaks and valleys of your surface per 1/4 inch. I don't know how well you guys can see this thing here, but I'll show you the readout after we do it. You just set it on a nice clean spot so that it can drag across a nice flat surface, and then turn it on. Click the little button to start it. Makes a little tiny noise as it's dragging that little needle across the top of the surface here. But yeah, we get about, I think, 15 UIN on average. I think a lot of the factory finishes that we see, here you are, it's 13.92. I know that's backwards, but that's an incredible surface finish. And our 20-year-old machine and our 5-year-old machine gets about the same readout on that. But some older machines from like the 60s and 50s or even the 70s gets a pretty rough finish. And depending on, if you're not watching this stuff and controlling your quality, you're going to have a lot of head gasket failures and other issues that come from rough finishes. There are certain head gasket brands that require you have a certain UIN finish. But the smoother the better. It used to be where old aluminum heads back in like the 70s or so would get that rough finish on it, and then as they heat and expand, they'd end up cutting through the head gasket, causing a lot of head gasket failures there. So the smoother finish you can have on an aluminum head, the better. Nowadays, it's not so much of a concern because most of the equipment out there, at least the newer equipment, puts on this sort of finish, which is ideal for that.
And another application to where it really comes in handy, where we get this awesome finish like this, is for use on MLS or multi-layered steel head gaskets. Whereas you don't really get that compression that you would out of, say, a standard head gasket. So basically, it has to be flat, and smooth, and for it to seal up. So that's another application that it is highly useful to have these machines to be able to get this type of finish. Performance applications where you're getting boosted and things like that, they need to be, really solid and sealed.
Yeah. Right, you are, good sir. Yeah, but we put this finish on cast iron or aluminum. Everything we do that involves a head gasket resurface comes out with about this finish. So we're pretty proud of that quality there. Even factory cylinder heads and other aftermarket cylinder heads we get in here brand new. And some people tend to take like a giant buffing wheel after they've resurfaced it and buff the surface so that it looks really great. But that ends up putting low spots in the thin areas and high spots in the wide areas and makes an inconsistent head gasket surface. Even for an MLS or any kind of gasket to seal that, they'll do it, but it just won't be nearly as long as if they didn't buff that or if they had a nice finish. So, we also had a video on there where we were talking about, it was a video that we were talking about on YouTube. We were kind of like going over what's wrong with it. But there's a whole bunch of people doing some, at-home DIY resurfacing techniques, and they get giant stones, like for grinding stones, and just drag it across the surface. Or there's one guy that was probably my favorite. He's just sitting on the ground with cement, just rubbing it on this rough cement, trying to get a new finish on it. Oh my gosh, that was ridiculous. But they also had some pretty innovative ones. They had like a tractor jacked up so that the wheel could turn and it'd move this bar back and forth and drag this giant stone across the block. And, all trying to achieve the same goal of flattening out the head gasket surface enough to make it function properly again. But
did they have any that were belt sanders at all?
I did not see any belt sanders there.
Interesting.
I was kind of surprised that there wasn't any belt sanders. I think it mostly focused on giant stones. I don't even know what they're used for, really. Yeah. But just dragging a flat stone across the surface, that was like the common technique there. It was a lot of camaraderie there, too. You had two guys who were working probably for hours to achieve not even close to what we achieve in about 10, 15, 20 minutes resurfacing with our equipment here. But these are in different countries where they might not have that easy access to equipment like that. But, some people tend to use a piece of glass and some sandpaper and or maybe even some marble or stone that's super flat, tape some sandpaper to it and use that to try and clean up the surface. And I'm sure some of that will improve it from where it was, but the surface finish, the consistency, it's all over the place, no doubt. And having the right equipment makes a huge, huge difference, especially in those boosted or high performance applications. You don't really expect those things to have much of a life anyways, but
turbo comes on and all of a sudden you hear a pop.
Yeah. But especially if you're not doing the job properly, you're shrinking that life expectancy up quite a bit. Trying to achieve some high performance, you want all the best things you can get to increase your odds and longevity. It really sucks going down the track and blow something up.
Jeez. Yeah.
Bound to happen, but you can reduce your risk there.
Speaking of resurfacers, we got our new fixtures and upgraded fixtures.
The cutting tool fixtures.
Yeah. That's cool.
On this Burco equipment, we have little carbide holding tool holders that after about 6 years they kind of wore out and took some damage. So we got some replacement ones today, and
stronger material.
A little stronger material, probably going to last a little longer. But having that roughed up equipment, really hindered our efficiency around here. So getting those tools makes it a little easier for us to be efficient. And letting your equipment wear down and stuff like that is just a real drag on your efficiency and your quality of work. we try not to compromise if we don't have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else do we got going today? I think we got some of the chain-driven Subaru engines. I think we've done a video or two on. We got a couple of those in from 2013 Subaru Outback, and what's that one over there?
It's those are BE 25s.
B25 castings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot more of those newer. Let's see, 2011 to now 22. They've been making those engines with chain-driven dual overhead cams. The Subaru 2.5 2 liters. We've been seeing more and more of those coming in from like 2011, 2013. Those are quite a bit more complex than the single overhead cam VVT cylinder heads that we're used to rebuilding. But we're figuring it out. We're keep going. And I did talk to somebody just the other day. I haven't actually driven one of the 2022 2-liter turbo heads or cars that they got. But it says they can do 14 seconds in the quarter mile stock. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I want to go test drive a couple of those.
That would be fun.
Yeah. And that's the chain driven engine too. I know that they have the belt driven engine all the way up to 2021.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think they do produce still a little more power going the belt driven route. And they've kind of been fine tuning that for
That's been
20 years pretty much.
That's been since one of the first generation STIs.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot more performance stuff you can get for those belt-driven designs, I'm sure, than the newer chain-driven versions. But I'm sure those are up and coming. You know, I'm sure everybody's working on how to make those things go faster. So, I'm excited to see all the blown-up cylinder heads that are going to come from that.
People like their race cars, and they drive them like they are. So,
yeah, you know, the old 90s, 80s, 90s stuff is kind of fizzling out here. We don't see nearly as much as we did, 5-10 years ago, which is kind of to be expected.
Right.
Except for those people who are really a lot of sentimental value in their cars. We've seen quite a few cars this week that people's parents have owned since they were brand new and passed them down, and now they have them, and they're putting all sorts of Edelbrock heads in their 390 Fords and F-150s and stuff. Like, it's pretty cool when we get to see that sentimental value, down here. It's a whole nother level of care when you're building an engine or building a cylinder head, when somebody's willing to pay for all the bells and whistles to make it run as long as it can.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like, which is kind of uncommon, but the Subaru 2.2s that we just got in today, they're putting $5,000 into the engine build alone, let alone yet even getting to the heads. We haven't even got there and estimated that out yet. But this old Subaru Legacy or something, I believe it is,
92,
right? 92 Legacy. Most people, at that kind of cost would just go take that as a down payment and go get a new car. So, it's these type of people that want it done right and have sentimental value, and let's see, we also had the geometry issue with the...
That was the Edelbrock heads
with
for
the
the
Edelbrock,
F-150.
Yeah. It was definitely interesting to see. I mean, we tried shimming it, we tried, adjusting, and just couldn't get it there, so...
Yeah, I'm not sure, that the rocker arm assembly to that 390 cylinder head is an Edelbrock casting, which I've heard that the Edelbrock has changed the positioning of the valves a little bit, or maybe the rocker arms, but either way, they don't line up just right, so there's a little bit of finesse you got to do there, whether it be shimming it or maybe even getting a different set of rocker arms. But there's a lot of different answers that you can have for this thing, or different things you can try to achieve the same goal, which is proper geometry and getting your rocker right on top of that valve. The easiest way that we can think of is to just call Edelbrock or the rocker arm company and discuss it with them and figure out what's worked in those applications before, because they should have all the knowledge for that. It's their cylinder head, and maybe the rocker arms aren't compatible with it like they would be on an old cast iron cylinder head. we played around with that a little bit before we just are turning to the Edelbrock Tex and their tech support center to tell us what's worked for them in the past. That guy's he's a big fan of his truck, and he's gonna spend whatever money he needs to make sure that he's happy with the power it's putting out and the longevity and all that. So it's really nice to see that. We are doing a giveaway when we get to 1,000 subscribers. We did a video last week about our giveaway. We're going to give away some mugs, some stickers, some magnets, some pens, and some gift cards. If you like that video, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment on the video, and leave in the comments your email and that you want to be a participant in this giveaway. And then after we get to our 1,000 subscribers, we'll go through that and send that out. And if you want an instant win option here, if you go through all our videos, like and comment on all of them, that's an instant win, and we'll send you out a prize for that as well. But yeah, once we get to 1,000 subscribers, that's what we're going to do for that video. And if you want in on that video, just look it up. It was probably last week in our recent videos, and that'll tell you all the information you need to know to get involved in that giveaway.
And a lot of cool stuff. So guys, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, make some comments in there, and you'll definitely enjoy your giveaway prize.
Yeah. I'm going to grab that 2.2 liter Subaru.
Oh, yeah.
We don't see those things too often these days. And there's quite a big change from then to now. This is the single overhead cam 92 2.2 liter cylinder head with a little bit simpler rocker arms right here, single exhaust port, 2 intake ports, a little bit smaller valves. The whole cylinder head's quite a bit smaller than the EJ25 generation here. That's right after. Let's see, that started in 98 or 99?
98 or 99, yeah.
But
this version doesn't have a separation cap. It's all one casting.
oh yeah, the cam. There's a hole cut out for that cam to fit right in there, and it just slips right into the casting. Then you got your rocker arm assembly bolted on the top there, cam seal on the back side. This is a 92 cylinder head. They've upgraded quite a bit, a lot of different features in their newer version. This is like a 2008 here, the one we were showing you before with the broken cam, but this whole cam cap assembly pops off. We got videos about rebuilding this exact cylinder head right here. Well, this exact type of cylinder head right here in our videos. But a lot bulkier, a lot bigger, a lot more coolant. This is 2.5 liter, different valve train. They've really came a long way. Bigger exhaust ports, dual exhaust ports. Still got that dual intake side, but I'm sure these things produce quite a bit more power.
Quite a bit more power, yeah.
And there's the variable valve timing as well with these cylinder heads. And then they've progressed even further. They got the chain-driven dual overhead cam Subaru heads that they have nowadays, and those as well, a lot more efficient, a lot more going on, a lot more stuff to go wrong with it, but reliable setup. So. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching today. That's all we got. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, and maybe we'll address them next week. Thank you for watching, and remember, it's all in your head.
Good stuff.
That's right.
How many viewers do we have?